Like the title of the video says, we are going to be covering Tempest Barrage. This is Hydroid's #1 ability. This ability calls down an artillery strike on a location. Some notable things that are not necessarily in the stats are the fact that these shots that are called down can interact with map geometry. I believe they can interact with allies, and they can obviously interact with enemies. So if it clips something, it will hit it, it will not go through it. So be careful where you use this. Almost always the barrage itself comes from a direction. Now I know that's kind of asinine to say, but what I mean by that is this thing will pick a random direction depending on what map you are on and what, I'm assuming if they're randomly generated, it can be any number of directions. So you'll always notice it kind of comes in at an angle. It's never straight from above, and this can cause it to clip. I have not actually seen the direction change, so if you know it's coming from, south on the map, it will always come from south on the map. I think this is due to some way that they're internally coding how the skill works, so it's something to keep in mind when you're calling down an ability. You don't want to call it down and have all of your shots hit a pillar or something else. So jumping into the rest of this ability is chargeable. So when you charge it, it does increase that 25 energy cost to double. Both of those are affected by efficiency. So if you have ability efficiency, you can lower it from 25 down or from 50 down. There's no real special interactions with efficiency other than that. The radius stays at 10 meters, so the area of effect that you have on this ability is always going to be 10 meters. So what I'm going to show you right now is just such a thing. If you hold down the ability, it'll actually show you the area that you're going to be affecting, and it's that little light blue circle there. And what I'll do real quick is I'm just going to change my energy color to something a little bit more visible. So what's super visible? Let's go with red. So let's go ahead and try that again. If you tap the ability, you'll actually see it just kind of goes off. If I hold it down though, you'll see that pool appear. That is no better. Let's go with something maybe a little bit brighter. I apologize for this. I really wasn't planning on red not showing up. So let's go ahead and do that again. There we go. That's a lot better. So that's the area of effect that you're going to have. Now, if I go and throw on a bunch of range, and we can do that real quick, you're not going to see that get any bigger. So let me go ahead and put in range. We'll throw on, that's negative range. This is positive, positive. Where is it at? There you go. And we're going to just go and look at that circle again. So it's the same size circle, it doesn't get increased. Now, you'll notice all of these shots are coming from roughly that direction, and you will see that they're clipping the walls, etc. So, now that we know the main area of effect doesn't get changed, we have to actually look at the explosion. Each of those missiles coming down has a range to itself. That's that explosion radius at the bottom there. Now that does get increased, and that can actually make this skill more or less consistent. So what I want to kind of do here is bring over a graph, and this is going to help me kind of visualize or demonstrate what I mean by this. So 10 meters is going to be our default size for this ability. 5 meters, this inner circle here, is each missile. Now if I take this AoE and I double it, we're basically hitting everything inside each time. But what we have to also realize is that this thing doesn't always shoot directly in the middle. So it can shoot over there, it can also shoot over here. So this is an example of where it's, off by half a measure in any direction. Now what we also could do, and this is maybe a better test, is to show the circle as if it was at the absolute extremity of where it could land. So this is literally a shot coming down at the very edge of the circle. So you can see most of our circle here is untouched, right? We're not going to have a whole lot of coverage if it lands out here. Now, it's pretty rare for it to land at the absolute extremity. I almost always see it landing kind of in this zone right here. But what we can do too is once we have doubled the size, you're going to see we're getting a lot better coverage. And if we're not at the absolute extremity, you're going to see a lot better results. So even if we're off a little bit there, off a little bit here, we're still going to be covering most of the stuff inside, and that has to do with the skill's reliability. When I cast it in a location, can I expect the enemies inside that location to be hit? And area of effect, which is, you know, increased by range, is going to be that thing that increases your consistency with the skill. It is a really good attribute, even though it doesn't increase your whole area of effect. So I always see, like, I don't always see, but when I have seen it in the past, the fact that it doesn't increase the total size kind of puts people off of the skill, but range is pretty good on it. It increases its consistency by quite a bit, and that is actually going to come into play a little bit later when we talk about the rest of the things that this skill can do. So let's go ahead and minimize that, and let's take a look back at Tempest Barrage. Now, the other two things that we have here are duration and damage. So duration has a base duration of 5 seconds. If you fully charge it, it goes up to 10 seconds. Now this is a charged ability. It takes about 2.5 seconds to charge. I actually recorded a little bit and I tried to do some screen-to-screen testing to compare these two. And what I found is if you actually cast this ability twice, it actually takes a little bit longer than it would if you had to do a full charge of the ability. So what that means is you're going to have two different ways you use this skill. You have the first method where you just spam cast it. Tempest Barrage is pretty unique in terms of charged abilities. It's not super unique, but it's at least different than his other ability that's charged, in that you can have multiple instances up at a time. So I can actually cast a barrage at each location, and it will continue raining at all 3 or 4 or 5 or however many you have. So just keep in mind this thing can actually stack on top of each other. So what you're going to have to decide with this ability is, do you want to hit a single area a lot of times really quickly? That would make you want to cast it again and again as fast as you can. Charging it up doesn't make it hit faster, it just makes it last longer. So if I cast it twice versus full charge casting once, we're actually going to get the same total number of shots. It's just one's going to have the shots happen a lot quicker in a small window. One thing to note as well, when I've been doing testing with this ability shoots about 4 projectiles a second. Now this is a rough estimate. I've seen it kind of get a little weird with how fast it shoots sometimes. You'll see like dead spots in the middle sometimes. So it shoots roughly 4 shots per second. I've also noticed on the initial part of the cast, usually there's nothing for a little bit. So I don't think the first second the skill is active, it actually shoots. I recorded about 3 different variations, and in each one I noticed there was about 1 full set of volleys missing, and it's always at the very beginning. So just keep in mind, if you have a lot more duration, or if you charge, you're actually going to get a net benefit out of that, just because that missing volley is going to be mitigated by the fact that the skill lasts a lot longer. So if you have a short duration skill, missing 1 volley out of 4 is a big deal. Missing 1 volley out of 12 is, you know, not that big a deal. So just keep in mind that this does shoot a number of shots per second. Charging and having longer duration will kind of mitigate that skipped first wave. Another aspect to this is going to be casting speed. So as you guys probably know, natural talent and some of the skills like it will allow you to cast skills faster. So your abilities will be able to be spammed quicker. So if I have natural casting, it's actually going to let me spam more shots per second into an area. It will also increase the speed at which I charge my ability. So if I go ahead and throw on that mod, oh, my bad, I'm sorry about that. Wrong thing. What is going on? I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but I think my keyboard's starting to go. Sorry about that. So I threw on natural talent here. So let's go ahead and see. You can notice it's much quicker filling up, and we're actually going to be able to cast a little bit faster too. So just keep in mind, if you use this ability or his 4th ability, which we'll cover at a later date, it may or may not be really useful for you to run Natural Talent or something like it. Now keep in mind, Natural Talent isn't an outright increase like it says. It's plus 50% casting speed. Remember, that is a diminished stat, so this is only going to net you, I believe, I want to say it's like 33%, but I forget the exact calculation. So it'll be about 33% faster, and that's to keep you from being able to stack 100% cast speed and instant casting everything. So it just doesn't work that way. So just keep that in mind. Natural Talent is really good. It gives you 30 to 35% increased cast speed, but if you can't spare the slot, I wouldn't worry too much about it. This skill actually has a decent duration. Let's go ahead and jump into a little bit about the bolts themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn some Corrupted Bombards, and we're going to see kind of what the ability does. Now, as you probably have noticed, the damage was really lacking. Even if we full charge it, it goes from 150 to 300. That's not a super high amount of damage, and it does not scale with enemy levels like some of the newer abilities we have. So we're seeing, you know, 2 damage. Really not great. However, you are seeing that enemies are getting knocked down constantly. So in addition to this skill having impact damage, it actually has pretty much a guaranteed knockdown effect every time an enemy is inside its area of effect. Now, the area of effect itself, the giant circle, is not what's knocking them down, it's each individual missile. So they do have to be inside that area of effect to be knocked down. Keeping that in mind, we see why range actually becomes a pretty decent stat. Now, on top of that, now that we know we have the knockdown and we can kind of keep them in that area of effect, let's go ahead and jump into this guy's augment. And this augment is actually one of my favorite augments. It is, I think it's called Barrage, Corroding Barrage. 100% chance to inflict corrosive status effect on an enemy when they're hit by Tempest Barrage. And it's not just once per cast, it's once per missile. So what that ends up being, and you'll actually see that it's really nice. If I charge this up and I let it go on these guys, you're gonna see it go from 2 to 5 to 9, and it's still not super impressive, but you can see that armor just getting lifted off of them. And a lot of the times in a single cast, if you have like really good duration or something, you're actually going to start seeing enemies, yep, see that guy already had his armor stripped. So you can almost strip very high level enemies with one barrage, and they get CC trained the entire time. This augment basically makes it to where Hydroid doesn't need to carry around a corrosive weapon all the time. Also, he doesn't need to run the aura that removes armor. So I really respect that. I like that. This skill is pretty well designed. It has a really interesting way that it deals damage and the way that it deals its CC and everything like that. Everything kind of works together nicely. Now, the final aspect that I kind of want to cover on this skill is actually one of its interactions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn these Corrupted Bombards again, and what I'm going to use is Undertow. Now, Undertow is the ability where you turn into a pool of water. Now, I'm not actually going to cover it in super great detail, but I do want to showcase one of the strengths of the Barrage augment here. So if I come up here and I turn into a pool, I'm actually going to drop enemies into it. Right? You're going to see numbers popping up. They gain increasing amount of damage over time as they sit in your pool. Now this deals flat damage. It also deals percent damage. Now you notice we've been in here a while. Warframe's kind of fast paced. 300 damage after this long is not that respectable. If we come out, I've done maybe 3%, 5% of their health. That's not that great. However, if I go back into Undertow and I just point straight down, I can cast my barrage on top of myself, and you're going to start seeing these numbers jump. Now, that being said, you see 5,000, 6,000, etc., and that was just a tap. So I removed, you know, a decent amount. Oh, and they're popping out dead. So yeah, this really makes some of his other abilities very effective. Now, some of them deal true damage, and that's fine, but armor is always going to be something that you're going to want to deal with in some way in Warframe, and this ability is actually really good at it. It's not the same as some of the, Saren or Volt to some degree, where you can one-shot the entire map. It has a much smaller AoE, however, that AoE is very effective. If you're inside that, they're getting CC'd, they're getting armor stripped, etc. Now, this is pretty much going to conclude it for this video. If I missed anything or I misrepresented anything, please let me know in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.